Sheikh Hasina's 15-year consecutive rule over Bangladesh has come to an end. The daughter of Banga Bandhu, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Hasina once in fact helped rescue Bangladesh from military rule. She presided over breakneck economic growth over the last decade and a half in a country once written off by the US statesman Henry Kissinger as an irredeemable basket case. But her long rule has come to an end as protesters stormed her residence. Shocking scenes came in from Dhaka that have made headlines as we saw protesters defying the military curfew to march into the capital's center. As troops pulled back and internet access was restored, tens of thousands of people began to celebrate in the streets following Sheikh Hasina's resignation. Forced to flee her country, Hasina has taken refuge in India for the time being as she plans on her next moves. The reigns of the longest-serving Prime Minister of Bangladesh have come to an abrupt end. Yet, it is important to take a look at the larger picture. This ouster has not occurred overnight. And let me now take a moment to take our viewers through everything that has happened in Bangladesh in the recent months. In January this year, general elections were held in Bangladesh. These elections followed months of growing tensions that saw political protests turn violent. For months leading up to the polls, the main opposition party, the Bangladesh National Party, the BNP, called on Hasina to step down in favor of a caretaker government to oversee the election process. She rejected this request and the BNP ultimately staged a boycott. 7 countries issued promptly a joint statement. Australia, Japan, Canada, South Korea, Norway, United Kingdom and United States expressed deep concern, quote unquote. Although marred with contention, the election saw the Sheikh Hasina-led Awami League secure a landslide victory, bagging 224 out of the total 300 seats. The mandate of 170 million people in Bangladesh was rather clear. However, the voter turnout presented a different perspective. Pegged at merely 41.8%, it was the second lowest in the history of Bangladesh. This now led to many controversies. The US Department of State said that elections were not free and fair, and they expressed regret that not all parties participated. The UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office termed the election lacking the preconditions of democracy. It maintained that respect for human rights, rule of law was not abided by. A tumultuous start to her 4th consecutive term did not, however, deter Sheikh Hasina. In a bid to consolidate ties with regional powers, she chalked out visits to both India and China. Hasina visited India for 2 days in June. During this visit, India and Bangladesh signed 10 new MOUs to further cooperation in the fields of connectivity, energy and infrastructure. River water sharing, a scheme for medical patients and the launch of UPI in Bangladesh was also discussed. In contrast, Hasina's visit to China spanned 4 days. She held a slew of bilaterals with top brass of the CCP, including President Xi Jinping himself and the Prime Minister. Following this, 27 MOUs were inked, yet Sheikh Hasina abruptly cut her visit short. She was reportedly upset that China did not live up to its promises of extending a credit of $5 billion. In the midst of this all, discontent was brewing within Bangladesh. On the 5th of June this year, the High Court in Dhaka declared Sheikh Hasina's 2018 order to scrap the quota system null and void. Her government's decision was branded illegal and the High Court reinstated 30% quotas for descendants of freedom fighters. This, viewers, triggered a wave of protests mainly amongst the student community. On the 1st of July, protests broke out at Dhaka University. Students and teachers alike declared a strike. Within a week, the demonstration spread across the nation and a nationwide Bangla Bandh was declared. Protesters took to the streets. They threw up barricades across key intersections and blocked highways and railway lines. Although Bangladesh's Supreme Court suspended the High Court order on the 10th of July, the situation took a turn for the worse. The demonstrations soon turned violent, with protesters clashing with the cops. Reports of extrajudicial killings and torture intensified these protests. Hasina did express her condolences and also appealed for peace, yet the violence did not quell. The shutting down of 4G internet services did not help the situation either. Protesters set fire to headquarters of state broadcaster, the BTV, as well as the National Disaster Management Agency in Dhaka. As the demonstrations raged on, Hasina shifted the blame to opposition parties and alleged sabotage as well as foreign influence. However, her heavy-handed moves, particularly the curfews and internet outages, continued to fuel the protests. Things started looking up, however, when the Supreme Court of Bangladesh slashed quotas for the descendants of veterans to a mere 5%. The primary demand of the protesters, that is to reinstate a system based on merit, was in fact fulfilled. Yet, the deaths that resulted from Sheikh Hasina's attempts to suppress the protests sowed the seeds of widespread discontent. The protesters were not satisfied with the reduction in the quotas. Their demands, in fact, changed entirely. They called for Sheikh Hasina's resignation. Hasina doubled down as well, intensifying the crackdown against the protests. Even as public anger continued to boil, the army was ordered to crush the protests at any cost. This to and fro between the protesters and the army resulted in 440 people losing their lives. The situation soon reached a tipping point. The military refused to fire against the protesters. They turned on Sheikh Hasina. Cornered, she had no choice but to flee. Reports now suggest that Bangladesh's army chief Zaman gave Hasina a mere 45 minutes to resign. The irony is that Hasina is the one who appointed him as army chief. He's the one who's ousted her, not only from power but also from the country. Following Hasina's departure, Bangladesh President Mohammad Shahabuddin promptly announced the dissolution of the Bangladesh Parliament. Meanwhile, an interim government is now set to take charge. What has taken place in Bangladesh prompts us to ask, why exactly did the Bangladeshi army choose then to abandon Sheikh Hasina? Could a coup have happened without tacit acceptance of the Americans? What was the role that was played by Pakistan's ISI and the Chinese? I take this conversation forward with Major General Sheikh Hasina. We also have with us Pathikrit Pain. I have with me Pratim Bose as well, and Sumit Peer with us on the broadcast. Let me begin this conversation with Pathikrit. Pathikrit, I've tried to put together what has happened in the recent few months as far as Bangladesh is concerned. Sheikh Hasina's return to power was not considered to be a popular vote in her favor, but a sham of elections, specifically by foreign forces. What may have started out, Pathikrit, as a genuine students' movement against certain announcements regarding quotas that were made, do you feel that at some point it was certainly hijacked by pro-Pakistani elements within Bangladesh, and that there was some amount of foreign influence in what we've seen? Why does an army turn against its own leader?
Well, Devika, first and foremost, when in today's era, either countries go for full-fledged war or they try to trigger, anarchy kind of situations within your own country, and the second one is much more, preferable option. So, the possibility and the potential chances of external elements trying to foment trouble within Bangladesh was always there. And I don't think the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was not aware of it. She was pretty much aware. So when this student protest started, the biggest problem in today's era is you need to understand the kind of amplification, the kind of direction any kind of protest may take unless it is handled in a delicate manner. And if you don't handle it in a delicate manner, that protest, that mob can be weaponized to create an anarchy kind of situation, and then it becomes completely a situation which is out of control. In this case, I think the biggest cardinal mistake was shooting on the students.
Yes.
You cannot shoot at students this way. Because I understand Bengali like many others. So there are these young, students for whatever reason, they were pushed to a protest. And young blood is always very excited for the sense of doing something. There are these students like Abu Saeed, Mir Mugdho. They have become iconic names in Bangladesh today. Mugdho was a 22-year-old MBA student who was just distributing water, and he was shot at. This was avoidable. And so something which was purely on the quota issue then galvanized the entire Bangladeshi society. You have different elements in it. There are a lot of saboteurs who got involved. There are rabble-rousers who got involved. They used the entire protest front-ended by the students to actually destroy critical infrastructure. Today, once the euphoria ends, they will realize that it will take a long time for Bangladesh to come back to normalcy. First of all, everyone would want their own share of the pie. And secondly, no one is going to give up this entire newfound power to bring down a government because they didn't listen to you. But from the part of Sheikh Hasina, I think knowing the sensitivity of the issue, knowing the sensitivity of Bangladesh's own history, knowing the sensitivity of such protest, what they created, say, in the form of Arab Spring, or the Euromaidan revolution in Ukraine, or similar things which were tried in India, where the government of India showed extreme restraint and did not use firepower. Here, that mistake was made. You already had 200 people dead, and when the renewed protest started, again the firing started, almost 100-odd people died. I think beyond the point, we can, there are a lot of things being said about the army. I don't want to comment on the army because the army's role, I'm not very clear right now. But the army perhaps was not beyond the point willing to shoot at its own people. That's the thing. Yes, there are other things being talked about, army being perhaps at least a section of it hand in glove. We don't know. I don't know at least. The possibility cannot be ruled out. But from here on, the possibility of external elements being part of it cannot be ruled out. Because let me tell you one thing, the entire movement was too organized to be spontaneous. It was too organized. It was the manner in which it was amplified in social media, it was not spontaneous. There were elements playing a role. Then the expatriate Bangladeshis were told not to send money to the formal banking system. So the remittances started coming down. It was hitting the banking system. So it was a coordinated swarm attack that happened. And I think the government did not have a response to it. Somewhere they had to give in today or tomorrow. But yes, the Chinese, the Pakistanis, and of course the Americans. You remember what Sheikh Hasina stated in the month of May, that a white man had told her that if she allows a particular country to set up a base in Bangladesh, and probably it was Saint Martin Island, then she would not have any problem. Knowing that there are other countries who would try to fish in troubled water, she should have been far more careful. At least those who advised her should have advised not to use firepower. You could have talked to them, you could have, cuddled them, you could have been a little more soft towards them. Maybe at least this time, I don't know about future, this could have been avoided. But knowing that there are other countries trying to interfere, you could not have afforded to use firepower to kill 300 or so. You could have used rubber bullets. And that's where I think this mistake was made. And it would have a tremendous price Bangladesh would have to pay for the next probably 5-6 years, because reviving the economy is not going to be so easy. And I think India has to be equally careful. Back to you.
Okay, I want to bring in Pratim Bose as well. Pratim Bose, as far as the timeline of the coup is concerned, like I said, that what perhaps started as a genuine students' movement, do you agree with Pathikrit that the trajectory the protest took does seem as though there were certain elements that then took over that students' movement and used that as a weapon to oust Sheikh Hasina?
Mr. Pine has actually elaborated it very nicely. And I do agree with the majority of things that he said. It is, we are doing a post-facto analysis, and that there was a concerted effort and to dislodge the government was very much known, should have been known to the Bangladeshi government. And as we look back, as Mr. Pine said about the remittance, not sending remittance, they were sending remittance to the Hundi operations. Okay, so it means that there were who were working, hearting. If this thing doesn't work, then that thing should work. So there was an effort. It can jolly well happen that I think that is what happened, is that the student protest surfaced. In the meantime, if you remember, till before, say, around 13th, July 13th, these students were basically loitering on the streets. They were limited in certain pockets. They were nothing. Suddenly it grew. So the apparatus that was ready came over, and they have given it the shape. The way it was propagated, it was projected, transformed. It needs organized abilities. Those are not, loose army doesn't, they never win wars. It's a fact. So back to the topic where, and if we remember, probably many countries knew, Hasina had cut short her visit from China, came back a day earlier. And remember that she didn't get much from China also. So we don't know what happened. Why did she come back early? There was no explanation from the government. And I don't know, I think long stay in power made them, sorry for my use of language, but long stay in power make people thick-heads. Probably that is exactly what happened. I mean, they lost touch with the realities and used force. We will never know whether police had used rubber bullet or not, who killed whom. It is very hazy picture. But the blame will, of course, go to police. And this is where they have won. Once the body bag starts rising, it's very difficult to retrieve the situation. And that is what happened. And if we look at, just 30 seconds, if you look at the army's role, I'm telling you with a degree of, in Bangladesh, army is extremely feared. If there is army standing on the guard on the road, people will stay away at least 1 kilometer away. Here, what happened was, army, this time, for a change, army was exchanging pleasantries. And if you look at the scene at Ganabhavan, which could have been resisted, simply putting 2 soldiers, 4 soldiers on guard, people wouldn't have entered there. So there was probably an effort to create an imagery of public anger. I think so. It was part of whole thing. Army had actually, it was a peaceful coup.
Okay, I want to bring in Sumit Peer into the conversation as well. Sumit, is it fair to then say that the army towards the end abandoned Sheikh Hasina?
Devika ji, thank you very much for having me on your show. Give me a minute more. There are a few things I want to put in perspective. You know what my 2 fellow panelists have said? Not that, something different. Look, the first thing happened, there was a clear-cut attempt by United States of America to dislodge Sheikh Hasina. Victoria Nuland was there, Donald Liu was there. Why do they send to Victoria Nuland, Donald Liu? We all know, regime change specialists. And after this unsuccessful attempt, and even I have to be very direct, when Modi ji came back to power, Victoria Nuland had to resign. Donald Liu is still very much into the power. Donald Liu on record has gone, will not let a project like CPEC see the light of the day. He is on record saying that. Now what happened after coming to power, they were crying and they were howling, oh, election is not fair and all. All the West was doing that. But India kind of backed Sheikh Hasina and she was in power. What happened? She comes to India, then she goes to China. She has been to India 22 times. She has been to China 45 times. Double than what has been to India. She was trying to balance her luck between India and China. And what happened last time? Look, when she came India, she told us about, I'll let you build a dam on the Teesta River, which is very, very strategic for us for the perspective of Chicken Neck and the security of the Northeast. Because you see, in Doklam, we have China up to, in Bhutan, we have China up to Doklam almost. So we got that deal, and when she came back from China, she went to China. China, the visit was 4 days. It was cut short to 2 days. First of the protocol was not given. Xi Jinping met her, and the ministerial level exchange did not happen. And what did China promise her? China promised her $20 billion, $15 billion of Chinese investment, and $5 billion equivalent to yuan loan so that she can import things from China. So she went with from Bangladesh with a big delegation. She carried around 40 odd businessmen with her. A full plane load of Bangladeshis lands into China and they are mistreated. And when she meets Xi Jinping, what does she get? $100 million. Then this is not what she expected. Then she suddenly says, my daughter is not well. I want to cut short the visit. She cut short the visit and sent in Dhaka. Next day, all the delegation is called back. After that, she says, oh, I'm giving the project to India. It's not a love for India. It's something went happened there wrong. And now, because those Chinese are ready. What the sources say, ma'am, I'm quoting sources. What the sources say, that China asked her access to Myanmar to support an anti-India rebel group, which was falling short of arms, which she refused. I will not give you the passage. And China also wanted the access to the Bay of Bengal, a port which will give them access to the Bay of Bengal in return of that, which she said, I'm not going to give you. Then China got very irritated that you are living by us. How can you say no to us? Then the moment she returns, understand, after 3 or 4 days, this so-called student protest started. Now look into the student protest. Look at the images of the protest. We have seen people carrying, unfortunately, I have to say on the national TV, lingeries of Sheikh Hasina. They are beard people, 45 years old. Do they look students? I have seen people stealing dustbins. I have seen people stealing saris. I have seen these people doing all the absurdity. And if you look at the age, they are all around 35 to 45. I don't think students are of that kind of a age, right? I was a student 20 years back. So I don't know what kind of students are there. Then Pakistan's ISI infiltrated into Jamaati student wing. They flared passions. Now, our intelligence agencies, I will quote you one of the most leading newspapers. I can take the name if you want. Yesterday has written that there's Chinese and ISI worked together. They use Jamaatis, they use BNP, they fomented the trouble. They let the things go out of proportion, and Americans added fuel to the fire because this was also their motive, because they wanted a base there. It's very clear they wanted a base there, which she was not giving them. Now, adding to it, when all this was happening, Sheikh Hasina always thought this army chief is my who? He is his cousin sister's husband. She got him into the job in the January of this month. 6 mahina hua keval. And within, this is possibly why he let her go alive. He told her, madam, you have 45 minutes, pack your bags and leave. And immediately the India was called and we let her land in India because that's what the situation was. Army deserted Sheikh Hasina. Now, who has bought the army chief? I have to be direct here. I don't know China paid him how much money. I don't know what is the allurement that Pakistan has given him. Look, Iran is supporting the coup in Bangladesh. Pakistan is supporting the coup in Bangladesh. I have seen videos today in Bangladesh where they are saying Pakistan Zindabad. Bangladeshi students saying Pakistan Zindabad. Can you add the dots? They have been sworn enemies. So if you had all the things together, it was a student registration. But when the Supreme Court pulled back the reservation, technically student registration was dead that day. So what are these 45, 50-year-old people doing? One of the Awami League's secretary was lynched. He was put on a tree, crucified, lynched, and then put on fire when he was alive. These kind of lynchings only happen in Pakistan. After Pakistan, I have for the first time seen this kind of a lynching. Now, if you join all the dots, what I mean trying to say, it may have started as a student protest, but it was orchestrated into something else. Chinese and ISI worked together. They wanted Sheikh Hasina out. The general was bought in. General, because being his cousin sister's husband, gave her time and she was a bit of loyal to Sheikh Hasina. He let her go alive. Usually in Islamic countries, you don't let people go alive. Right. It was a great favor he did, that aap zinda jahiye. 45 minutes, leave the country. And army did not intervene, man. When the palace was ransacked, when the protesters came in, army did not intervene. In fact, yesterday I have seen videos, there are even ISIS flags there. What is ISIS flag doing in Bangladesh? What has ISIS got to do it? And if it's a student protest, why are you vandalizing all Hindu temples across Bangladesh? You have destroyed hundreds of temples, you have looted Hindu shops, you have burnt Hindu houses, you are killing Hindus, and even the 20 policemen which were killed, 13 of them are Hindus. You choose a police thana or a station when majority of the Hindus are police walas, you killed them. You attacked a jail today, you tried to kill the jailer, he was a Hindu, he ran away. You set all the radical Molazas and Molvis free. Then Khalida Zia is free. Ma'am, if you had all the things, yes. It is not a sporadic protest. It was foreign powers who were orchestrating it. Okay. Sheikh Hasina tried to handle it, but things gone beyond her realms of control. And if I had been with her, it would have control. Okay, Sumit, I want to bring in Major General Sheikh Hasina as well. I'll leave the last word with you, Major General Hasina. I want to understand from you, sir, is such a coup or is such a situation in Bangladesh in fact possible without tacit acceptance of the Americans?
Firstly, let me put it this way, that the first two speakers brought out the organic element and the indigenous element of this happening in Bangladesh.
Yes.
And Sumit Peer very aptly brought out the external element. Now let me put it in the strategic context. It is said that in the present day context, the instruments of warfare are changing. One of the new instruments of warfare is creating social unrest in a host country, in the target country. Now in this case, the target country happens to be Bangladesh. And the reasons are very simple. Let's put it as far as US and Pakistan are concerned, they were on the same side when Bangladesh was liberated.
Yes.
And they didn't want it to be liberated. So as far as Pakistan is concerned, the idea of that being East Pakistan never died. And that is the idea of Jamaat-e-Islami as well as you have all kinds of ISI agents. You have also got ISKP elements there. You also have AQIS elements there. So this is one part of it. The second part of it is the Chinese part of it. Now, certainly a developing Bangladesh and a very close relationship with India and a stable Bangladesh was certainly an eyesore for Pakistan. And it's, as far as Chinese are concerned, they were looking at a certain strategic reach in and around Bangladesh, which they were denied. Now, Sheikh Hasina was seen as one of the important pillars to keep all the radical and fundamentalist elements down and keep them pinned in some manner or the other. Now, as far as the protests are concerned, certainly the cause are there. And when I said this is a strategy of creating a social unrest, in that there is a genuine cause, because in democracies are vulnerable, there is always some disgruntled element, and there will always be some issue where people can be picked up, where that issue can be picked up and the crowd can be managed. Now, this was the issue which was picked up. I think if that was the relevant issue, then it should have died after the Supreme Court ruling. But that is not what happened. Secondly, I totally agree with Patikrat's view as well, that you cannot afford to kill people of your own country. You would imagine we have been facing as Indian Army similar crowds in Kashmir, but we never fired on the crowd and never fired heavy weapons every time, despite buying so many casualties. There have been cases people fire at us and get into the crowd and we never fire back. So we know after Jallianwala Bagh that what happens, the kind of hatred which gets developed if you kill your own people in your own country.
Right.
So therefore, there was an error as far as the security forces are concerned. Now, as far as the army chief and the issues which are being brought out, I think after Sheikh Hasina's resignation and the way the crowd was getting built up in Dhaka, it was better for her to leave, and army chief facilitated her leave, certainly, and declared that he is going to form an interim government. Now, the question is, till the time he allowed her to go alive, it still seems that perhaps he was managing the situation. But thereafter, the vandalization of the Hindus and the minorities, thereafter the release of the BNP leader, the release of Jamaati's activists, now these are the things which are indicating that perhaps there is an element of, some element of the army, which are also perhaps in consonance with what has happened. And I tell you, and why I say so is, because you see, before 1971, Bangladesh Army and Pakistan Army were the same. After the Bangladesh was formed, there were certain elements of Pakistan Army physically present in Bangladesh, and they have not forgotten that defeat. So, although a country which should have been so grateful to India for having liberated them and saved them for so much of atrocities, but you still find, because they have been doing courses in India, most of the Bangladeshis officers do a lot of courses in India and in Pakistan and in China. So, but we find that they are certainly not as much in favor as we would expect them to be. But notwithstanding that, the problem with India, with which we are facing, there are strategic issues now, that and security issues, that apparently the environment may so get created, wherein the terrorist elements, the ISI-backed elements, the ISKP elements, and all these elements may perhaps become active again, and may and earlier we thought that okay, this border is taken care of,
Okay.
Conventionally, Bangladesh army is very weak, so there is no threat conventionally.
Okay.
But support and space for the terror elements to take care, to create internal security problems is important.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.